Hi and welcome to this video where it's a slight diversion from the Mini. I'll be getting back onto the Mini pretty soon. And with the nesting season over, which is normally March to August, come September the farmers will be out there cutting all those hedges, and when they do that all the hawthorns end up in my rear tyre. So I've got myself some slime, and I thought, well, my son uses his bike during the week as well, so I think it might be worth putting some of this into his bike and my bike. Now I thought this might be worthy of a video because we've got the Schrader valves and the Presta valves. Schrader valves, simple enough, you could just take the core out, easily squirt this straight in. But on the Presta valves it can be a little bit more complicated. Now both of these are Presta valves, but there is a slight difference. This one you can take the core out, so it would easily facilitate putting this in. This one on the other hand has got the Presta valve where they crimp the thread. So I wanted to show a little trick how to actually still get thick slime into the inner tube on a Presta valve such as this on this bike, and thought this might be worthy of a little video. So hopefully you'll enjoy this if you do need to put slime in your tyres, and thank you for watching.
So what is tyre slime? Well, it's a non-toxic liquid suspension of long and short fibres with some tiny rubber particles in it. These get forced into the puncture hole with the pressure of the tyre when a puncture up to 3 mm occurs. The product should work for up to 2 years. I'll be using the red label slime, which is for tyres with tubes. So I will start with the crimped Presta valves on the rear wheel of the felt bike. So the first job to do is to remove the dust cap, undo the little brass nut there and deflate the tyre. Then we can just pop around and break the bead off the rim. It's been on there for a few years by the look of it, and so we just need to loosen that up so we can then get our tyre levers in. So we do need to remove the little circular nut there on the inner tube itself, so that's then free to go up and down. And we can now get the tyre levers out and very carefully start to remove the tyre near the valve stem. So we don't need to remove the whole tyre because we only need access to the valve area. So I've turned the wheel now to the bottom to try and make things a little bit easier, because we just need to pull that valve stem out now. You should be able to do it. It can be a bit tight. Just make sure you don't pinch the inner tube when you do it. And there's our Presta valve. Now the problem with those is the little brass nuts won't come off. So if you're very careful, you can just file the head of the thread off where they've sort of crimped it a bit, and then the little brass nut should come all the way off, like so. So the trick here is with that little nut off, we should better just turn the inner tube up and let that valve stem drop inside the inner tube. Now you want to try and catch it as it falls. So very carefully there, you can feel it just drop in, and try and keep it in the position that it fell, so it's in the correct orientation to go back in. And then what we can do is just use a peg or a little plastic clip to hold that in position while we're putting the slime into the inner tube. So that's that done there. So we can basically go and get our slime now. Now you normally put half a tube in per tyre. They do give you a little plastic sleeve there, tube. Now as you'll notice, that tube's too big. It's more for the Schrader valves, I believe. But what you can do is screw the end straight onto the valve like so, and then carefully squeeze 118 millilitres into the tyre, which is half a bottle. Now you do need to keep an eye on the level as it's going down. It's not the easiest thing to see, so we're nearly at half a bottle there at the moment. Now what you might find is if you get a torch, you can sort of highlight the bottle a bit, like I'm doing now, and there we are, just gone past half a level. So that's enough in there. So we can just unscrew that now. Now what I'm going to do is try and blow the stem through with a bit of air, just to clear any of the slime out of that. So that we can then very carefully push the valve back into position. And it should go up quite easily, like so. And then what you've got to do is just try and knock it out, tap it a bit, and the valve stem should come out like so. So there's the thread. So all we're going to do is carefully put the nuts back on, make sure you get the orientation correct. Don't put it on upside down. If you just try and hold it with your nail, you should be able to just screw that back on. Like so. Obviously when you come to inflate the tyre, never undo that nut fully, otherwise you might be in trouble. That's the only downside to this. So we can now put the stem back into the wheel. Like so. Make sure your inner tube's not twisted or pinched or anything. And then we can just squeeze the tyre back on carefully. Like so. Put our little stem nut down there. And we should be able to re-inflate the tyre now to the correct PSI. So we'll just quickly do that. Check the tyre's nicely seated and it's not twisted or anything. And that should be basically job done. Just tighten your little brass nut, put your dust cap back on, and the wheel will be out of balance at this point, so you do need to try and spread the slime around the inside of the inner tube. So just be aware of that. So now onto the front wheel of the felt bike. So we'll switch the bike around on the stand. Stands can make life a little bit easier. So again, dust cap off, deflate the tyre, break the bead away. You can hear it sticking to it. It's been on there for quite a while, that. Obviously didn't get any punctures before. So I'm just going to use a cable tie there just to hold the wheel in position so it doesn't keep spinning around with the camera in focus. Now you can file it while it's in position like this. Probably does make it a little bit easier. Make sure you get all the burrs off that though, because when you put it into the inner tube you don't want to actually cause a puncture because the brass is sharp. And another reason for not pinching it too tightly. We just get our tyre levers back in again. So it's actually fairly easy to actually do on these Presta valves. It's just knowing the little trick of dropping the valve into the inner tube. Obviously if you drop it and you don't actually catch it when it goes in, you might have a little bit of a game there trying to get it back into the correct orientation and back through. But as long as you're careful and not too rough, you shouldn't puncture the inner tube. Now this one was a little bit stuck, so I just used a little rod there just to push it down into the inner tube. So we've caught it there now. It's coming out. There it is. A peg will probably do on that. It doesn't need to be held tight, it's just just so that it doesn't disappear inside the tube. So now we just got to empty the remaining slime from this bottle, and that should sort this bike out. So hopefully my son doesn't get any thorns in his tyre, and if he does, he should still be okay. I did find this slime works pretty well. Come September I was getting a lot of punctures when I used to cycle daily, and the slime certainly caught a lot of them. I never actually had a flat tyre, even though there were thorns in the tyre. So it's definitely worth adding to the inner tube, I think. Like I say, once these hedges start getting cut, the roads get absolutely covered in thorns, and there's no way you're going to go through without getting a puncture. It was almost impossible. So put our little brass nut back on there now, and then we just get that back inside the tyre. Tuck our little stem in. So you will find the wheel is quite out of balance when you do start to cycle on it. So it does take a little while for the slime to evenly spread out inside the wheel. But when it does, you can't tell any difference. So that's that pumped up now. Sped that up a little bit there. So just checking the tyres still seated correctly. Pop our dust cap back on. Now I'm going to reuse my cable ties. I can't sort of bring myself just to cut it off and waste a cable tie, so I tend to be a little bit tight and prefer to undo them. So give that a little spin. You can see the bike's actually bouncing around there because it's out of balance, and it probably won't settle down properly until you actually take it for a proper little cycle. So now to show the same process but on the other type of Presta valve. So these are a lot easier, but again, same thing. Just remove the dust cap and deflate the tyre. So again, I'm going to pop the tyre to the bottom just to facilitate easier video making. Now, using a tiny little spanner, on this one you can actually undo the valve, like so, and withdraw it, which obviously makes life a little bit easier. Now, again, the tube doesn't seem to fit, and you can't screw it on like I did on the other one. So what I do is put a little bit of electrical tape on there, on the valve stem, and that will just give us a snug fit for that little filler tube. So don't forget to take your little seal off. So that's a good fit there now. So again, we can pop on the bottle and go through the same process of squirting half of the bottle into the first tyre. You can see the little black bits there, little black bits of rubber that are going in. Again, using a torch to see where I'm up to. I think that's about halfway by the look of it. So that should be that tyre done. So again, I'm just going to clear the tube through with a bit of air from the pump. Should make the valve sit on so that it sits in there properly and it's not being screwed onto a bit of the fibres or something. I'm going to give it another quick clean there Make sure it's totally... So there's our little valve. Just popping back in. And you don't need to do it up too tight. It's very gently tighten that valve back in. So these Presta valves are a lot easier than the other ones. I don't know whether these are newer ones or something. So we can now just re-inflate the tyre. These tyres actually do have some puncture protection anyway. But I still had thorns going through these tyres as well when those hedges started getting cut. So I do recommend Slime if you want to get back home without having to start mending punctures. So we spread that out. And then we just need to swap the bike around for the other wheel. So then, onto the rear tyre on the Giant Revolt. So again, I'm going to cable tie this wheel to keep it in the same position, so I just don't start chasing it around while trying to film. So again, just drop the air out, take our little valve stem out. I'm trying to zoom in here so you can actually see all the little parts of that. Quite an intricate little item. So back on with our tape. And then it's just empty the remainder of the bottle. Or remainder of the bottle, should I say. It does make me feel quite a bit more reassured that this is actually in my tyres now. I was meaning to do this for quite a while. Kept putting it off. I was saying in the summer you don't tend to get punctures unless there's perhaps glass at the side of the road or something. But like I say, come September, wow, it takes quite a while for those thorns to soften up in the rain and start to disappear into the hedgerows. So I've cleaned the stem out there, so we can just put our valve back in now. Like I said, you only need to gently tighten that. Doesn't need a lot of force. And then just re-inflate that tyre. A little bit of water just came out there. I'd actually just been cycling this morning. So the bike was actually wet. That's looking good. So like I say, the only thing is when you do come to pump the tyres up, make sure you don't lose the brass nut if you've had to file the little top off, because obviously if you keep undoing it, it will just come off in your hand, and if you lose that, you really will be in trouble. So that's considerably out of balance at the moment. So I thought I'd add a little bit on the Presta and Schrader valves and also the Slime itself. So I'm going to see if I can show you that valve as it drops out and how I catch it in the actual inner tube. So I'll go through the similar process where you file the top off, making sure it's all nice and smooth, not leaving any sharp burrs on it that could actually puncture the inner tube. So basically this is what happens, is once that nut's off, I keep my finger there so that it can't just drop and disappear into the inner tube, and then when I'm ready, I get my fingers ready to pinch it. Again, this one's a little bit stuck, so here comes the valve, and as it does, you just pinch it like so. It's a little close-up of it, and then put your little peg or plastic clamp on just to hold it there in position. So it gives you an idea of what's actually going on inside the inner tube. So it's as simple as that. And then the Schrader valve, obviously none of my bikes took the Schrader valve, is pretty simple. So the tube does fit on those nicely, so I think that's why those are probably made for Schrader valves. So you can use a little tool there just to take the valve out. There is actually a tool in the black plastic cap to help you take that valve out and pop it back in. And then you would just put your tube on after that valve's removed. Same procedure, pop it on your bottle and put half a bottle in. So I do prefer the metal little tools. I'm showing you there's a couple of tools you can use. They're very cheap. It's worth having in your toolbox really. So anyway, so that was the Schrader valve. Now we'll have a little look at the slime itself. Try and see what's going on with this stuff. So what I'll do is I'll take some of this out and I'll rinse it in a tea strainer. So hopefully you can have a better understanding of what's actually in this product. So that's not bleach, that is just water. So there is the contents of slime. It's almost looking like a fiberglass fibre. Might be perhaps polyester fibre. You can see the little black bits as well. Here's a photo of it, so you can have a good look close up. So that's basically what slime is. So you've been watching Adding Slime to Bike Tyres. And thank you for watching. And I hope this video helps you add slime to your cycle tyres if you choose to. This video was filmed and edited by me, Mark Savage, in August 2021, and I'm also available on Instagram and Facebook under Coats and Gators.